Okay, well, I think we have about 20 minutes, and I will open out the discussion to the audience, but I first of all just wanted to ask a couple of questions of the two speakers, whose papers I really enjoyed enormously. First of all, a rather specific one for Daniel. The magazine called El Hijo Pródigo, or The Prodigal Son, what significance does that title have, in your view, at that moment in Mexico, if any?
Well, I did some research concerning that. It seems that they were fascinated by the figure itself of El Hijo Pródigo, although it has like religious undertones. But if I can expand this a little bit, I think it refers to this idea of the, let's say, of the chosen ones, of the people that somehow like depart from society as such and go and do different things and then come back and somehow try to direct that society or somehow to help that society through the things that they have learned whilst they have been away, let's say. I think this idea has or has like some sort of resonance with two things. The first is like the whole array of contributors from Spain that were exiled at that moment in Mexico, and that most of them, like José Gaos or María Zambrano, were direct disciples, if I can use that word, of José Ortega and Gasset, that also had like similar ideas regarding these individuals in society. And it also resonates with one of the articles written by Roger Calois and published in the magazine, which is the introductory essay to his essay on the spirit of the sex, in which he also develops this idea of the individual that goes and then comes and can direct like or conduce society in one way or the other, positively or not.
So it's not specifically Los Contemporáneos or any other group that was sort of being welcomed back in some way?
No.
No. No. Okay. The next thing I want to touch on is really more an observation or a kind of an open invitation just for a little speculation about something. I very much appreciated what you said about Boaz and his influence on the way that Amerindian civilizations were being studied with the notion of some sort of pan-continental connections. Is that right, Maurice?
Yeah.
And of course, that's from an ethnographic point of view. It's an immediate lure for the art historian who thinks, "Hooray! I can try and follow a series of sort of iconographical traits across cultures." And I was very struck by that fantastic Paalen, the doorway that he wore. You both showed slides. It's the most amazing object. And it has on the, as it were, the joints of the limbs, little faces, yes?
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you find on the base of the Coatlicue statue, where Tlaloc is seen with skulls on his elbows and his knees and so on. And the same with the Raimondi Stela in Peru, where you get also some sort of curious articulation with heads on this figure. I just wonder whether you have anything to say about that observation.
I mean, there obviously are several points of view, probably, because also in the totems there's a strong genealogical order. So, and the idea of this love affair, as I called it, between a human and a bear, created the origin of this family or this clan. So, of course, babies are inside. And then it has probably a purely plastic or purely pictorial value, that somehow the space has to be filled, and the energetic points which are in the structure and the rhythm of the painting are important. Then they get, you know, a special energetic upload through these faces, where of course you look at, you know, you stare at the faces, you know, and then walk through with your eyes through the painting, you know. And that was also for me so fascinating, that of course Paalen, who defended Cubism very much in the 40s, and I think one of the most influential essays was on the meaning of Cubism today. It's from the theory, it's not from the style, from the theory, from the idea of Cubism. This is a Cubist painting. You know, it's completely closed to the back side. It goes to you, and you have to move with your eyes, multi-perspective, and this is also a fantastic point, you know.
Thank you.
Probably, I don't know if you have another. I'm not an anthropologist, so.
No. No, but I'm interested in the point where art history and anthropology actually begin to intersect. I think we should, yes, thank you. Open up to questions. So, here first.
I'd like to open a few more words on your first point, which is el hijo prójimo, because there is pródigo. The prodigal son is a myth that pervades many societies, and in Mexico it had a political sensibility because there's always contentious intellectual schools of thought. And el hijo prójimo, pródigo, encompasses or provided a place for all of the alternative, non-mainstream thinking to come, all the rebels, because traditional culture weighed mightily in Mexico. The European, the importance of European, the Palacio de Bellas Artes mentality was what weighed and what controlled and what existed in Mexico at the time. And seething revolutionary forces unleashed during the revolution developed to the point to come to this place where many contending points of view, a renovation, it was almost like the snake changing its skin. All of these articles, all of these minds coming together very much outside of the mainstream. So returning to truer roots. And there were the references to the Pre-Columbian and the connection, very important. And so there are a number of levels at which the prodigal son was encompassed or implied in that journal, because they were voices that could not find publication in the, quote, mainstream publications.
Thank you very much. I think that's extremely useful. Daniel, do you want to comment on that? I'll just say the covers of El Hijo Pródigo, the first few, have a lot of, I mean, very, very curious images of the prodigal son returning, and some are colonial, some are modern, some are very ancient.
Yeah, breaking it up.
Yes, breaking. Do you want to say anything more?
No.
No? Okay.
I have,
Sorry, one there.
yes, this is a question for Andreas Neufert. I was interested that at the beginning of your talk you set Paalen up more as an enabler than an achiever, okay? And then you sort of set up the ideas in Din as of extreme interest to the Americans, the young New Yorkers. And I was wondering if you might be interested in commenting a little bit further on what you think the impact that Paalen might have had on Motherwell, since he actually hung out with him in Mexico for a little bit.
Yeah, that was exactly the period where Motherwell changed. I mean, he was a very young painter. He's just started to paint in Mexico. And there is this famous Mexican sketchbook where you can see that he becomes extremely interested in plastic and plasticism and space, and how the painting can attract the eye and these kind of things, you know, which probably is already a sign that he, with Paalen, of course, who was talking, he said later that he had a lesson in surrealism with Paalen. But of course, Paalen was completely into his going away from surrealism or his pan-surrealist plans. So he must have talked about that. And they had a kind of a gentleman agreement that they wouldn't show each other the paintings. So that was also a little bit, my idea to see Paalen in that case. I don't mean that he never achieved things. I mean, he did enormous paintings also when you see this very sensible, from the body also person, an elegant person, how big the paintings and how much strength is in these achievements which he had. But in this team, from this perspective, he was really a truly inspiring person who shared ideas more than he wanted to share his achievements under each other.
Would you consider Motherwell a conduit to the...
Yeah, and then it goes on. I mean, Amy Winter knows probably much more about that, but Motherwell, of course, in New York, he became sort of a mouth speaker for Paalen, because there were these reunions with Mata, and Mata would show all the techniques. He would also show the fumage. Pollock was sitting there, and he said, "I can do that without smoke." It's a famous expression. It's a famous expression of Pollock, yeah. And Mata, of course, showed these things. And in the end, Motherwell and Mata became into a fight, because Motherwell always became metaphysic, He always wanted to speak about Uspensky and the fourth dimension and these kind of things. And Motherwell said, no, we need to have a painting in front of ours. You cannot paint the fourth dimension. It doesn't arrive you can illustrate it, but you cannot really get into the fourth dimension through a painting. So slow down, come to the emotions, and come to the rhythm, come to the painterly structure of a painting. So Cubism. And that was very important, these encounters, even Paalen being absent in New York. I mean, he was present from time to time. Lucita has left us. She could testimony these 2 or 3 times a year, maybe. They went to New York and had regular encounters and were at dinner parties with all these artists,
Amy, and then... Oh, sorry, it's the other way around. Right.
Thank you. I wondered about the 2 magazines that Daniel presented, Din and El Hijo Pródigo. Was there any feelings of competition, or was it rather appreciation to one another? Did the people read each other's magazines? How were they perceived?
I think they had I'm sure for example that Octavio Paz knew about Din and read it, and on the other hand you have Cesar Moro that contributed to both magazines. So I don't know for sure how was the involvement between the 2 editorial boards, if you can call them that, but I'm sure that because of this kind of contributions, and they knew about the existence of each other. But I cannot see let's say a dialogue, an open and clear dialogue between the 2 magazines.
It's quite striking with magazines during the 20th century how often they advertise each other. And there's a whole kind of avant-garde network. But in this particular case, I'm not sure. Amy, you had a question? Oh, hang on. Can we have the microphone?
One thing is just a point of fact that the bare screen was not the one that you showed in the Trader's Waters shop. That was a reproduction, and apparently it was so famous that many versions of it were made. Paalen got the actual one off of the front of Chief Sheikh's house. And that's the one that's now in the Denver Museum.
Yeah.
But there was a whole other story about that.
This is a photograph I just 2 days ago I found in Inverness, in the archive of Gordon on the Fort, and I was completely surprised. So finally I found a shop where he bought it, because it was a dealer, no, who had it. It was a tradesman, Watersea Waters. He had it,
right.
yeah.
No, but he didn't, the one that you showed in the shop is not the...
Was not the one.
Not the original, no.
Okay.
And actually...
I know that now it's reproduced again, and it's again there in Wrangell, in front of the
Right.
house.
Well, something to be worked
copy.
out. It actually figured into a scandal later in Paalen's life that Onslow Ford attributed to his suicide, but I'll tell you about that some other time.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to say is in reference to your Dawn, your thing about the heads on. I think it really has to do with evolution, as you know, and the way in which indigenous people signified evolution, their version of understanding of it, which, you know, Darwin obviously intellectualized. But I also think it has to do not only with birth, but with death, and with their understanding of the cycle of things, rather than simply generation.
Yes, I mean, I entirely agree about the notion of evolution, that there was a much more sophisticated understanding of the potential age of the world in America than there was in Europe. I mean, for a very long, and it deeply shocked the Europeans when they arrived here. Okay, sorry, yes.
Yeah, I had a question whether Salvador Toscano was the director of that movie Memorias del Mexicano. And the second question is actually how widely distributed were the two magazines? How many copies were made, and was it just Mexico City that they were distributed?
In the case of Dean was distributed in the United States, in New York, and in France as well. And in the case of El Hijo Pródigo, it was more like a regional market, a national market, in terms of its distribution. No, Salvador Toscano was an art historian. He focused on pre-Hispanic art. He also wrote on other things concerning colonial art, and he died very young in an airplane accident when he was around 37, 38, more or less. So it's not.
Okay.
Copies is a mystery. We don't know exactly know. The Dune magazine started probably very small, but then became larger, but not more than 60 only.
60 custom-made copies.
Ah.
Okay.
But it's written there inside?
No, it's
No.
written in an article from actually something.
Well, that's nothing. That's nothing, 60.
No.
No.
As you said,
But it still arrived in Paris, it was in New York, in Gotham Book Mart, no? Which was...
The first 60 copies made in Mexico were, of course, exclusively.
Ah, okay.
Yes, it's about Boas and Ortega y Gasset in The Prodigal Son. I guess the debate was much more complicated. I mean, you really put it very well together. But I'm wondering if, Ortega and Boas conformed a tradition of pre-Columbian studies and of the whole tradition of how to focus on Mexican art, basically pro-Columbian. And the fact that this cultural relativism had to be installed first in history, in sociology, in anthropology, but not in aesthetics. Aesthetics would come as a result from this explaining of where it came. So would you say that the editors of Prodigal Son were aware of this difference between the historicist sort of point of view the cultural relativism question, and also the aesthetic focus on pre-Columbian pieces, because that is, I think, a very important debate at that time. What do you think of the...
Yeah. I think, as you mentioned, it's a debate at that moment. Maybe like things were not clear like in the 40s, but I think like the lines were different and they had more or less like a clear idea about their treatment on pre-Hispanic art, and it just gets clearer with time, and you see like Octavio Paz, like the last writings on these issues that Paz wrote. He has a text on, it's called I think like Covarrubias and the Pacific or something like that. And in that he mentions on trans-Pacific contact, the ideas of Covarrubias, and Octavio Paz is saying like, no, I don't believe this. It's very interesting. It's an idea that somehow excites me and makes my imagination fly, but I don't believe in this. I believe in the uniqueness of Mesoamerican forms, and that they were not in any sort of contact till 1492, more or less.
Can you wait for the microphone? Sorry.
An important debate that continues and is still to this day, even with DNA findings denied by my Americanists who are strictly archaeological. And it's something that DNA has really opened up our understanding of the Trans-Pacific or Bering Strait connections.
I think it's a fascinating point, but it's one that could actually take us a very long way. So I think, as I've been told to stop, I think we have to stop there. And we'll thank you very much, Amy. And we'll reconvene at 2:30. 2:30.
Oh my God.